All right. Good morning. What is up, everybody? Welcome to an early edition of Diligent Spaces on X. I made a commitment to someone um, to stream the Darren Indyke and Richard Khan depositions in Spaces. So that's what I'm doing. I'm fulfilling my commitments, man of my word. If you don't know, Darren Indyke and Richard Khan are two attorneys, but one's an accountant, one's a regular attorney, like a commercial kind of fixer attorney, right? And they have worked with, for, and still for Jeffrey Epstein for the better part of 3 decades. They set up the LLCs for Little St. James and Big St. James. They set up the LLCs and handled the transactions for the purchase of Zorro Ranch and some of his New York property. They are intimately involved with everything that has to do with his operations, all of the shell companies, Southern Trust, all of that. They were involved in all of that, right? I couldn't think of two people who have more intimate knowledge about Jeffrey Epstein's operations than Darren Indyke and Richard Kahn. There are photos of Darren Indyke leaving his New York property while it's being raided with bags full of documents and it looks like DVDs, right? So these guys have been allowed by the feds, no, mind you, that was while the feds had possession of Jeffrey Epstein's New York estate. These guys were allowed to leave the property in New Mexico, Zorro Ranch. They went out there. The feds went out there. They cataloged and then they left. And then the estate handlers, who are Darren Indyke and Richard Kahn, were allowed to go out there and remove property. Right. So these guys have been protected by the state all along. This is the first time that they've been deposed in this kind of setting. They've been sued by Epstein's victims and survivors over the years many times, but often they just didn't show up for the depositions. So we're going to hear them and see them answering questions directly about his operation for the first time ever. Now, the Oversight Committee on the House, they're the ones that deposed them or interviewed them both last week. I was wondering if these were going to get released. They quietly released them yesterday. It didn't make a lot of news. There's so much other stuff going on. And so I think it's our responsibility to make sure that this gets seen by the public. So I'm going to play it at 1.5 speed or 1.25 speed. It's going to be a long one. This one right here is 6 hours long. But at 1.25 speed, it should only be a few hours. So we will keep it. We will keep it at 1.25. We'll get through it. We can talk about it. We can pause for breaks or whatever if we hear anything special, and then we will go from there. So, all right, let me get it going. Hi, YouTube. If you're over there on YouTube, do me a favor, go down to the bottom right corner and repost the space in the comment section. If you're listening on X, help us get boosted in the algorithm. The survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and the victims who are no longer with us definitely deserve for their stories to be heard and this information to get released to the public. So go down and repost the space. If you're on YouTube, share the link from my YouTube and like the video and share that with people who are your normie friends on X so they can get a raw version of events. Thank you so much. What's up, Harmony? I know you're working. So you don't have
No,
to.
yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, good morning, Diligent. I'm excited to see what we can get into together. I know it's an early one, so yeah, let's go.
It is. Let me get the link going for the chat.
Awesome.
Um,
Yeah. And so is it just us as speakers for now? Should I be approving anyone or?
Yeah, you can bring whoever up. It doesn't matter. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
come up on stage if you guys want. It's all good. Yep, it's all good. Yep, This is chill. This is chill. You know, this is chill today. We don't have to get into it too much. Let me get the link going here.
So basically, it's going to be the stories of the victims. I guess I'm just asking for people who just joined.
This is the accountant and the lawyer for Jeffrey Epstein over 30 years, and this is the first time I've ever been interviewed about his operations, his
Wow.
trafficking operations. They've never been investigated by the cops. Isn't that weird? The
Well,
his main accountant and his mate, the main accountant that handled all of his crazy, shady financial transactions, and the attorney who set up all of his shell companies and LLCs have never been interviewed by the feds. Why do you think that is?
probably didn't want to get Clinton.
They probably, well, I mean, the feds, because the feds don't want to ask them questions. They don't want the answers to. Yep, they want to bury it. Yeah, and they probably don't want to get Clinton. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Wasn't there I can't remember what year it was, but there was a judge that was on the case like this, and they sent a FedEx worker to her house, and then that FedEx worker shot her husband. Am I wrong about
Is
that?
that, whoa, I don't know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but there was a judge on an Epstein case, and while she was working on it, they basically had someone undercover as a FedEx delivery driver come, and they shot her husband, and he died.
I did not know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, I'll try to
That's
look it up,
crazy.
but that's kind of what happens to people, you know what I mean, that are just trying to do
Mm-hmm.
their job, and then all of a sudden, if it's not them that gets poisoned and die or get shot, then it's who they love. So it scares people into submission.
God, that's terrifying. That's horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, the judicial system works if you can get there and no one's paid off, you know what I'm saying?
If you can get there. All right, I think I am about ready. Again, please go down to the bottom right corner, repost the space. The link for the YouTube is also up in the Jumbotron, and we will get going. All right, let's see. Cool. Let me know if the sound in the video or the sound's working.
This is a deposition of Mr. Darren Indyke conducted by the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform under the authority granted to it pursuant to House Rule 10. Accordingly, House Rule 10 grants the committee broad jurisdiction for the committee to conduct investigations of any matter at any time. On January 7th, 2026, the committee voted to approve a motion directing the chairman to authorize and issue a subpoena to you for a deposition. On January 23rd, 2026, Chairman Comer issued a subpoena for Mr. Indyke to appear today for a deposition in furtherance of the committee's investigation into the actions and investigations of Mr. Jeffrey Epstein and Ms. Ghislaine Maxwell. I will enter the subpoena and corresponding cover letter as Exhibit 1. The committee noticed the deposition for Mr. Indyke on March 4th, 2026. I will enter the notice for this deposition as Exhibit 2. Can the witness please state his name and spell his last name for the record?
Darren Indyke, Indyke.
Thank you, Mr. Indyke. My name is Jack Emmer, and I am the Chief Counsel for Investigations for Chairman Comer. Under the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform's rules, you are allowed to have a counsel present to advise you during this deposition. Do you have a counsel representing you in a personal capacity present with you today?
I do.
Will counsel please identify themselves for the record?
Mark Weinstein from Hughes, Hubbard & Reed.
Daniel Weiner, also from Hughes, Hubbard & Reed.
Thank you. Now, starting with the majority staff, can the additional staff members please introduce themselves with their name, title, and affiliation?
Billy Grant, Deputy Chief Counsel for Investigations for Chairman Comer.
Peter Spector, Deputy Director of Oversight for Chairman Comer.
Daniel Ashworth, General Counsel for Chairman Comer.
Ryan Giacchetti, Chief Counsel for Chairman Comer.
Will Harness, Professional Staff Member for Chairman Comer.
Ellison Tolan, Counsel for Chairman Comer. Brittany Bergnac, Senior Counsel for Chairman Comer. Emily Feinerhagen, Counsel for Chairman Comer. Caleb Paffey, Professional Staff Member for Chairman Comer.
Jack Furla, Counsel for Chairman Comer.
Melvin Soto, Digital Director for Chairman Comer.
Thank you all. Mr. Indyke, before we begin, I would like to go over the ground rules for this deposition. The questioning will proceed in rounds. The majority will ask questions for an hour, and then the minority will have an opportunity to ask questions for an hour if they choose. To the extent members have questions for the witness, they will be propounded during their side's respective rounds. The clock will stop if you need to confer with counsel, your counsel is speaking, and when members or staff are speaking during the opposing side's rounds of questions. We will alternate back and forth until there are no more questions. Do you understand?
I do.
There is a court reporter taking down everything I say and everything you say to make a written record of the deposition. For the record to be clear, please wait until the staffer questioning you finishes each question before you begin your answer, and the staffer will wait until you finish your response before proceeding to the next question. Further, to ensure the court reporter can properly record this deposition, please speak clearly, concisely, and slowly. Also, the court reporter cannot record nonverbal answers such as nodding or shaking your head, so it is important that you answer each question with an audible verbal answer. Do you understand?
I do.
Exhibits may be entered into the record. Majority exhibits will be identified numerically. Minority exhibits will be identified alphabetically. Do you understand?
I do.
We want you to answer our questions in the most complete and truthful manner possible, so we will take our time. If you have any questions or do not fully understand the question, please let us know. We will attempt to clarify, add context to, or rephrase our questions. If we ask about specific conversations or events in the past and you are unable to recall the exact words or details, you should testify to the substance of those conversations or events to the best of your recollection. If you recall only a part of a conversation or event, you should give us your best recollection of those events or parts of conversations that you do recall. Do you understand?
I understand.
You are required by law to answer questions from Congress truthfully. This also applies to questions posed by congressional staff in this deposition. Do you understand?
I do.
If at any time you knowingly make false statements, you could be subject to criminal prosecution, including but not limited to perjury. Do you understand?
I do.
This includes both knowingly providing false testimony, but also stating that you do not recall or remember something when in fact you do. Do you understand?
I do.
Furthermore, you cannot tell half-truths or exclude information necessary to make statements accurate. You are required to provide all information that would make your response truthful. A deliberate failure to disclose information can constitute a false statement. Do you understand?
I do.
Is there any reason you are unable to provide truthful testimony in today's interview?
No.
Please note, if you wish to assert a privilege over any statement today, that assertion must comply with the rules of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Pursuant to that, Committee Rule 16C1 states, for the chair to consider assertions of privilege over testimony or statements, witnesses or entities must clearly state the specific privilege being asserted and the reason for the assertion on or before the scheduled date of testimony or appearance. For the purposes of this deposition, objections must be stated concisely in a
right,
non-argumentative
through
and
this
non-suggestive manner. If the witness refuses,
We get to the questions.
And to respond to the committee's request for
Here we go.
Save
Let's
us,
listen to this.
diligent.
and we would ask that you finish answering the question to us when we finish.
and to respond to the committee's request for documents, photographs, and other information relating to Jeffrey Epstein. As you know, the estate produced voluminous materials in response to the committee's subpoena and communicated regularly with both the committee's majority and minority staffs on the timing, scope, and content of the estate's responses. My appearance here today, as with my co-executor's testimony before the committee last week, represents our continuing cooperation with the committee's efforts to investigate matters regarding Mr. Epstein. In addition, since we were appointed in 2019 by the United States Virgin Islands Probate Court as co-executors of Mr. Epstein's estate, we have fully cooperated with the U.S. Department of Justice's investigation of Epstein-related matters. I'd also like to note the extensive efforts that my co-executor and I have made to address the wrongs committed by Mr. Epstein during his lifetime. At our direction, the estate initiated, developed, and funded the Epstein Victims Compensation Program, the first of its kind established by an estate, which provided a private, voluntary, and non-confrontational means to compensate women who suffered sexual abuse by Mr. Epstein. Independently
silence.
administered by preeminent figures in the field of victims' compensation, the EVCP awarded more than $121 million to 136 women, all of which the estate funded, pursuant to our express direction that, one, there was to be no cap on monies awarded, either individually or in
He's
the
virtue
aggregate, and
signaling
two,
on
even
the
women whose
victims
claims
getting
were
paid
time
right
barred
now
or who had previously
for
signed
what
releases
Epstein
could
did to them.
participate.
Crazy,
The estate has
bro.
also directly settled claims by an additional 59 women for a total of more than $48 million,
He was a part of that
including the
whole
recently
operation
proposed
for
settlement in a putative
decades.
class action lawsuit filed in 2024 on behalf of all women abused by
Motherfucker should
Mr.
be in
Epstein,
jail.
a settlement that the court preliminary approved earlier this month. my co-executor and I have authorized payment by the Epstein estate of more than $200 million to women who assert they were abused or trafficked by Mr. Epstein. Let me be clear. I had no knowledge whatsoever of Jeffrey Epstein's wrongdoings. My complete lack of involvement in that misconduct is a matter of record. Not a single woman has ever accused me of committing sexual abuse or witnessing sexual abuse, nor claimed at any time that she or anyone else reported to me any allegation of Mr. Epstein's abuse. I did not socialize with Epstein, and I reject as categorically false any suggestion that I knowingly facilitated or assisted Mr. Epstein in his sexual abuse or trafficking of women, or that I was aware of his actions while I provided legal services to him. Far from being Mr. Epstein's lieutenant or chief of staff, as I have been incorrectly described by plaintiff's lawyers and uninformed journalists, I was one of many attorneys whom Mr. Epstein regularly consulted, including such noted luminaries as Kenneth Starr, for entirely legitimate purposes. My primary role was to provide corporate, transactional, and general legal services to Mr. Epstein and his companies, and yes, I did so. The press and plaintiff's counsel have mischaracterized cash withdrawals I made from Mr. Epstein's bank accounts from 2013 to 2017. Entirely ignored in that reporting is the fact that the bank involved knew full well that these accounts belonged to Mr. Epstein. Neither I nor he made any effort to disguise his name or identity. And as part of its standard policy, the bank itself imposed a $7,500 limit on daily cash withdrawals. I was not attempting to structure such withdrawals to avoid federal reporting requirements. Quite the contrary. I simply sought to comply with the bank's internal requirements and limits, with the bank's full knowledge. It is undisputed that during this time, Mr. Epstein had difficulty assessing credit cards from major banks. Instead, he and his staff required cash to pay for a wide variety of expenses, including maintenance, repairs, and daily household needs for his
Untraceable
residential properties
transactions
in
when
New
you're
York,
doing shit you
Florida,
don't want to
New
do.
Mexico, Paris, and the USVI, as well as meals, gifts, gratuities, and fuel for his private aircraft. For a person of Mr. Epstein's financial position, with 5 multi-million-dollar residences, staffed by dozens of employees, and with an extensive travel itinerary, it did not strike me as unusual that Mr. Epstein's business, household, and personal needs required large amounts of cash on a regular basis. I never believed that the cash I withdrew from Mr. Epstein and his staff was used by Mr. Epstein or his staff for any improper purposes. There have also been allegations of my supposed involvement in facilitating forced or sham marriages between women in Mr. Epstein's life. Those allegations, too, are 100% untrue. I did not arrange, assist, or facilitate any marriages between acquaintances of Mr. Epstein, nor was I aware in advance that such marriages took place. Same-sex marriage has been legal in New York since 2011, with this passage of the Marriage Equality Act. I did not consider it appropriate to interrogate anyone as to the reasons for their decisions to marry or the bona fides of their relationships. I don't mean in any way to condone or excuse Mr. Epstein's reprehensible conduct. Quite the opposite, I condemn it wholeheartedly. Had I known that he was abusing or trafficking women, I would have quit working for him at once and severed all ties to him. The truth is that I did not know what Mr. Epstein did after hours, what he did behind closed doors, and what he did in places where I was not present. I first met Epstein in 1996 when he was already a highly successful businessman. After he pled guilty in 2008 to procuring a person under the age of 18 for
1996.
prostitution, Mr. Epstein appeared to me to be devastated and extremely contrite. He was adamant that he had no idea that anyone involved was underage, and personally assured me that he would never again let himself be in that position. I believed him, and I made the mistake of believing that Mr. Epstein would not again commit a crime. I deeply regret doing so. Most importantly, I feel horrible for the women whom Mr. Epstein abused. While my professional association with Jeffrey Epstein has subjected my family to death threats and malicious
So
personal
horrible, he
attacks, I
dodged
don't
being
expect the members
interviewed in
of the committee or of the
depositions
public to feel sympathy
from
for me.
lawsuits of them for
But I am left trying to explain
for
what
a
many
decade.
people who knew Jeffrey Epstein have noted after his death. He led two entirely separate lives, his professional one and the other, a private, personal one that caused many others to
I
suffer.
agree, Skeptic Nut.
That I did not know what my client did in his private life may be difficult for some to believe, but it's true. Thank you.
Starting with the majority, may all individuals, members, and staff who have since joined us since the beginning please announce themselves for the record.
James Comer, Chairman from Kentucky. Andy Biggs, Congressman, Arizona 5.
William Timmons, South Carolina 4th Congressional District.
Dave Mann, California 47. James Washington, Virginia 11.
Thank you. The time reads 10:22, and the majority's time will begin now. Mr. Indyke, let's begin by discussing your education and experience. Where did you attend undergraduate school?
Colgate University,
And what degree did you graduate with?
a degree in education and economics,
What year did you graduate?
1986,
And where did you attend law school?
Cornell Law School,
And when did you graduate law school?
1991,
When were you admitted to practice law?
1992,
In what states were you admitted?
New York initially.
And where have you since been admitted?
In 2019, I was admitted to practice law in the state of Florida.
Is your license currently in good standing?
I believe my licenses in both New York and Florida are in good stand.
Can you briefly go through your professional career up until now?
Sure. When I graduated Cornell Law School, I worked as first a clerk and then as an associate for the law firm of Golden Wachtel. I did that until I think it was 1994. In 1995, I joined the law firm of Greenberg Traurig in New York City. I worked there until sometime in 1996, towards the beginning of 1996, at which point I was asked by someone who was a former partner at Golden Wachtel to go work for him and with him to represent Jeffrey Epstein and his company. And since then, I have been working to represent primarily Jeffrey Epstein, both as an employee and then subsequently in my capacity as a law firm, my own law firm.
Prior to your employment with Mr. Epstein, what areas of law did you practice?
Corporate securities and trademark law.
When did you first meet Jeffrey Epstein?
Sometime in 1996, towards the beginning of 1996.
And Mr. Indyke, I understand that you're hard of hearing, so we're going to try to speak up, but if you could also speak up as well for everyone in the room.
Sure.
So let's begin again. When did you first meet Jeffrey Epstein?
It was, I believe, towards the beginning of 1996.
I also just remembered I have Web, which is Ian Carroll's AI thing with all of the files on it. So we can actually fact check this mofo in real time. If we think he's lying, we can look shit up on here. So we can look stuff up. All right, cool. Yeah, I forgot about that. All right, let's go.
Has there been anything so far that you've heard that might be worth asking or no?
I haven't heard it. This is the very beginning of it. We haven't heard anything yet.
Okay.
So yep.
Where did you meet him?
At his office in New York City.
And why did you meet him at that time?
Prior to my meeting Mr. Epstein, the partner that I worked for at Golden Wachtel had asked me to come work with him to represent Mr. Epstein. And as part of
Wait, who did you
doing that,
say?
he wanted me to meet law school. I worked as first a clerk and then as an associate for the law firm of Golden Wachtel. I did that until
Golden
I
Lochtel.
think it was
That's how he
1994.
met Epstein.
In 1995,
So he said a partner
I joined the law firm of Greenberg Traurig in New York City. I worked there until sometime in 1996, towards the
A
beginning of
partner
1996. At which
put
point,
him on to Epstein.
I was asked by someone who was a former partner at Golden Wachtel to go work for him and with him
Golden Wachtel.
to represent Jeffrey Epstein and his company. And since then, I have been working to represent primarily Jeffrey Epstein, both as an employee and then subsequently in my capacity as a law firm, my own law firm.
Prior to your employment with Mr. Epstein, what areas of law did you practice?
Corporate securities and trademark law.
When did you first meet Jeffrey Epstein?
Sometime in 1996, towards the beginning of 1996.
And Mr. Indyke, I understand that you're hard of hearing, so we're going to try to speak up, but if you could also speak up as well for everyone in the room.
Sure.
So let's begin again. When did you first meet Jeffrey Epstein?
It was, I believe, towards the beginning of 1996.
Where did you meet him?
At his office in New York City.
And why did you meet him at that time?
Prior to my meeting Mr. Epstein, the partner that I worked for at Golden Wachtel had asked me to come work with him to represent Mr. Epstein. And as part of me doing that, he wanted me to meet Mr. Epstein in his office. So I did so.
And for the record, I missed this. Who else was present during this meeting?
don't recall. It was many years ago. That partner may have been there. So it would have been him and Mr. Epstein, I think. I don't recall anybody else.
And what did you discuss with Mr. Epstein at this time?
I can't recall specifically, but basically he asked me questions about my background, my corporate and securities background, about the work I did at Golden Wachtel and the work I did at Greenberg Traurig. Told me I'd be doing similar work for him.
Prior to meeting Mr. Epstein, what did you know about him?
Very little. When I worked at Golden Wachtel, I understood that he was a client of Golden Wachtel. And I understood that the partner that I worked for at Golden Wachtel had done some work with him along with one of the named partners, Bob Gold. But that's the extent of what I knew about it.
And what you testified to was all related to his business. Did he have any reputation outside of his business as it related to young women or girls at this time?
Not that I knew of.
What were your first impressions of Mr. Epstein?
I was slightly intimidated because he was explained to me to be a very wealthy man. I was not very wealthy, and I was very young at the time, and he was explained to me to be a very successful businessman. My impressions for him was that he was no nonsense. He seemed pleasant enough. Nothing more than that.
What did you understand his job to be at this time?
I understood that I would be providing support and assistance to the partner that brought me in connection with representing Mr. Epstein's business interests.
And you mentioned that
I think, Jack, could you ask what do you understand his job to be or your job to be?
Mr. Epstein's job.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. Mr. Epstein's job, my understanding was that he was a financial consultant for wealthy individuals.
Did you know who his clients were at this time?
No.
Just to be clear, you mean before he took the job?
Correct. We've had a member join. Mr. Indyke, recognizing that we'll discuss more specifics later, can you briefly describe the nature and extent of your relationship with Mr. Epstein?
I was one of Mr. Epstein's many attorneys. My role was primarily a role as a corporate and transactional attorney. My role was to review documents, summarize documents, analyze documents, critique documents, draft documents, in a wide variety of areas. Investment documents, private placement memorandums, subscription agreements, option agreements, warrant agreements. Let's see what else. Registration rights agreements, stock purchase agreements, rights of first refusal agreements, all of those and kind of side letters for investments, all of those in the investment field. There were times when he would do some trading, and my role was to review the trading confirmations. And to the extent there were documents required as a precursor to the trading, like interest swap agreements, things like that, I would review the interest swap agreements. To the extent that I had any comments on those, I would give my comments on those agreements. If Epstein was going to buy or sell a business, there were times when I would be required to draft basic business agreements or letters of intent, or review a purchase agreement or a sale agreement, and critique it and summarize it and provide any evaluation of it. Epstein had aircraft, and his clients had aircraft. I was involved as an attorney in connection with the acquisition and sale of aircraft, fixed wing aircraft, helicopters, rotorcraft, both new builds from manufacturers like Sikorsky, and sometimes when they were resales of the aircraft. Also, there was lots of real estate that was being acquired and sold during this time. So I would work with local counsel. If it wasn't in New York, for example, I would work, and sometimes even if it was, I would work with local real estate counsel in the acquisition or sale of real estate, anything from large acreage ranches to islands to townhouses to apartments to homes, any number of parcels of real estate. estate that was acquired, there was a lot of construction going on during the course of my representation. And that construction would require architects and design. So I would review AIA architectural and design agreements, again, summarize, critique, evaluate. I would review proposals, just make sure that the proposals for any particular building or design were incorporated all of what I understood to be the kind of the roles or the program for the building that was to be done. There was construction management agreements that had to be reviewed, general contractor agreements that had to be reviewed. Sometimes liens would come up. So all of that, those things would have to be reviewed. From time to time, when a new asset like an aircraft or a helicopter or even a large boat would be acquired, a new entity would be formed for that asset, because that asset was a large, tended to be as an aircraft. Aircrafts can fall out of the sky, they could cause serious damage. So so kind of it's corporate law 101 to make sure that when you have a kind of a liability type asset, you put that asset in a separate entity. So other assets held by the person can't be subject to the liability that is created by that asset. The same holds true for, it's kind of normal operating procedure, particularly for people in high net worth situations. When you would take on a new investment, or there would be an investment program, you would form a separate entity for that investment program. For new businesses, because you didn't want to mix a new business with an old business, you would form an entity for that new business. So part of what I did is, either if it was some place that in a jurisdiction where I was admitted and I knew of a corporate service company to do it, I would have a corporate service company form the entity. If not, I would have a local attorney do the same. So we did those things. Just kind of the types of things sometimes are very, very complex. There was just to give you an example, there was a project that required connecting one of Epstein's islands, because he had two, that island to the St. Thomas mainland, and that required the manufacture of a 15 kV cable with fiber optic capabilities by this Italian manufacturer. So I would have to work on that agreement with the manufacturer, and then we'd have to do, I'd have to work on a separate agreement for the installation of that cable across the span from St. Thomas mainland to the island, and then you'd have to work on the local to step down the cable. All the work that the electrical contractors had to do to connect the cable to the island. And then there was also permitting that I had to work with local council who handled the permitting, and local environmental consultants to do the permitting to lay the cable on the ocean bed. So lots of different things like that. There was
I think that's,
yes.
I just have a couple questions related to the number of attorneys. You mentioned there were a number of attorneys working in-house essentially for Mr. Epstein. Is that correct?
No, it was a number of attorneys that Mr. Epstein engaged.
Okay, so how many were actually working in-house?
At which time, sir?
Give me an example. Early on.
Early on, 3 attorneys.
And then as time went on?
2 attorneys. And then ultimately, nobody was working in-house. Ultimately, he was using outside counsel, including me as outside counsel, and other attorneys as outside counsel.
When you had the 3 attorneys, are you one of those 3?
I was one of the 3
You
attorneys.
got down to 2, obviously you were one of
I
them.
was still, yes, one of the attorneys there.
Okay, and then you continued on until?
I continued on with the other attorney. I was there, but the other attorney formed an entity to serve Epstein and other clients, and I worked for that entity, and I was a junior member of that entity. And then ultimately, I formed my own law firm.
Did you have any associates in that law firm or partners?
No,
You were sole proprietor?
I was.
Thank you.
Sure.
We've had more members and staff join. Can they please announce themselves for the record?
Sure. Robert Garcia, I'm the ranking member for Oversight Democrats. Roe Connick, California 17.
Yasmin Ansari, Arizona.
I want to stick with asking general questions to start. So during the course of your representing Mr. Epstein, how often did you communicate with him?
Towards the beginning, infrequently. I mean, I saw him from time to time. I spoke to him from time to time, but mostly his communications were with the partner that I worked with. And then the partner that I worked with would speak to me about assignments that I had specifically. Over time, I would have some interactions with him I would get direct assignments from Mr. Epstein.
And you mentioned the partner, that's the same partner you referenced before.
Yeah, it's the partner who kind of asked me to come and join him representing Mr.
And
Epstein.
for the record, what was his name?
His name was Jeffrey Shantz.
And how would you typically communicate with Epstein?
At which time?
During the course of your relationship?
Okay, so kind of multifaceted. Sometimes I would get messages. Sometimes I would get a communication through the partner. Sometimes he would be in the office and I would meet with him for 2 minutes, not a lot of FaceTime, and get a specific assignment. And then sometimes I would get a message from his assistant saying something that Epstein wanted from me. And towards the later end, I would meet with him when he no longer had an office in New York. Towards the later end, I would meet with him. I would meet with him on the ground floor in the dining room of his residence.
How often would you meet with him at the residence?
It really depends when. So towards the beginning, not at all. As time went on, once a month, sometimes twice a month. If he was in town and there was a transaction going on, could have been more, but typically it was about twice a month.
How long would your meetings last when you would visit his residence?
Typically an hour or so, maybe two, most.
Who typically would be present?
There was no kind of typical thing about who would be present. It really depended on the transaction and the specific matter that was, or matters that I was meeting with him about.
And I can hear you just fine, but there's a lot of people in the room that are struggling to hear you. So
I'm sorry.
However much you can speak up,
Okay.
Very helpful.
Yes.
But I just want to focus on who was present. There are women that have been identified and deemed as assistants of Mr. Epstein. Do you recall them being present at these meetings?
I recall women coming into the meeting, delivering a message to him, sometimes bringing some food to him, but generally his personal assistants were not in the meetings.
And you mentioned that early on you'd have meetings at your office, and then it seemed that it became more common that you'd meet at the residence. When did the shift occur?
I think it was 1998 when Mr. Epstein moved his residence, his primary residence, to the U.S. Virgin Islands and his business to the U.S. Virgin Islands. So he no longer maintained an office in New York. And so when he came to New York, the requirement was to meet at his residence.
And I'm going to ask you a general question here. What were the nature of your communications with Mr. Epstein?
Can you rephrase the question?
What were the nature of your communications with Mr. Epstein?
I'm trying to understand. That's very general, and I don't really know.
Were the nature of your communications always related to the furnishing of legal services?
Yes.
So, for the record, did you ever have any communications with Mr. Epstein related to young women or girls?
No, absolutely not.
How would you characterize your relationship with Mr. Epstein?
It was strictly a business relationship, strictly a legal relationship.
For the record, at any point, did you consider Mr. Epstein to be a friend?
No.
Did you ever spend time with Mr. Epstein apart from your duties as his attorney?
I never socialized with Mr. Epstein. I never spent any time with Mr. Epstein other than when I was there for a status report or a legal project for Mr. Epstein.
Did you ever consider Epstein to be a mentor?
I did initially, and I could tell you a little story about that. When I first started working for Epstein, I got this assignment. I can't remember the transaction that I was working on, but I got this agreement, and he told me I needed to get it reviewed and critiqued, and I mark it up. It's the word that they use. Mark it up and give me your comments to it. I think I had 24 hours to do it. So I went back to my office, spent a very long time in my office, probably till like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock that night, marking the thing up. And when I gave it to him, it was full of red. It's completely red. And I thought I'd done a fabulous job in marking up an agreement and showing all the ways the agreement was defective. When he looked at it, kind of looked at it and said, well, what am I supposed to do with this? So I have a transaction that I have to get done within the next week. This is never going to, first of all, I don't know what's real, what's not real here, what's important, what's not important here. I can never get a transaction done if this is what I have to do. So now take this back and go find me the 10 most important things and rank them in order of importance to me. And I learned a huge lesson from that. And he taught me about being a practical lawyer, not just, a lawyer that's finding every possible theoretical kind of loophole in an agreement. So in that respect, I thought he was very helpful. And so that's, and he had other kind of advice to me like that. Those types of things in being a lawyer to, don't guess at things that I don't know, tell them what I don't know, tell them what I do know. And if I don't know, tell them I don't know. Those are the types of things that he taught me to do as a lawyer, which were helpful to other people that I was working with as a lawyer.
Mr. Indyke, that's helpful advice. You don't be just technically proficient to help facilitate the deal. When you were working with him, you never sat down and had a drink. You never sat down and smoked a cigar with him.
No, never. Two things. He doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, but that wasn't our relationship.
You didn't never say, come along to have a cocktail party after work, come on, nothing like that.
I was never invited to a single dinner party that he hadn't had a few.
Okay, thank you.
Did you ever ask Mr. Epstein for personal favors?
Let's see how to answer that question. I asked him for help when I was, I think it was my first year or so. Sorry, my first year or so when I worked for him. I don't remember the exact time period. My wife and I were having fertility issues. Infertility treatments were quite expensive and they weren't covered by insurance. So I had asked him if it was possible for me to forego the insurance, and in lieu of the amount of money that he was paying for insurance at the time, if I could take that money and apply it towards the cost of infertility treatments. And at that time, his response to me was, absolutely not. You should keep your medical insurance and I will pay for your infertility treatment. Subsequent to that, it didn't work, and it didn't work, I think, 4 other times. Subsequent to that, without me having to ask, he would tell me, when are we doing the next one? And so Epstein paid for all of our infertility treatments until we were able to conceive.
This time I'd like to introduce what will be marked as Majority Exhibit 3. And this is a letter sent in 2008 by Mr. Epstein's criminal defense lawyers to prosecutors in Florida when Epstein was under investigations for crimes committed against minors. This is a compilation of statements from various employees of Mr. Epstein, all attesting to his good character. The document is base number EFTA 2857458. And I would like to direct your attention to page 13. We're specifically looking at the bottom, and page 14, and I will give you a moment to review. So, page 13.
Thank you.
So in 30 years, he never had a drink with him, never
For the
went
record,
out to
we're
eat with him,
reviewing the
nothing according
italicized
to him.
portion. Did you write this, Mr. Indyke?
I believe I did.
And why did you contribute a statement for this filing?
I'm trying to, let's see what this was for. believe I was asked by defense counsel to contribute a statement for him.
So there's a part where you mentioned that Mr. Epstein had provided a motion that, in reference to what you previously described as help for infertility issues.
Yes.
And for the record, again, why did Jeffrey Epstein offer to pay for these services?
I can't tell you what was in his own mind. I can tell you my perception was that he was being generous to me. He didn't really know me very long, and there was no kind of obvious benefit to him at that stage in my career with him. So I guess he was being generous. I will say this, that, you know, in the years that followed, he did this kind of thing for other employees, friends, acquaintances. He appeared to be generous. He appeared to understand that his money could do good things, and he appeared to use his money to do things like that for people.
Did he provide you any other support besides the infertility support?
Can you be more specific in terms of a time frame?
Well, we're looking at this character reference around this time, 2008.
No, but you know, that was a big deal, obviously. It was a very difficult time for my wife and I, and it was very meaningful to me to have that support.
We've had another member of Congress join. Can she please identify herself for the record?
Sure, I'm Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury from New Mexico.
Mr. Indyke,
Yes,
it's a poignant letter that you wrote here. Did you see in the whole packet that was submitted as the defense for Mr. Epstein before it was submitted?
I don't recall.
Were you aware what the charges were pending at the time that you wrote your statement?
I'm trying to remember when this statement was written. It was kind of fluid at that time.
Well, you knew that there was some kind of criminal allegation against him, which is why there was a criminal defense attorney that was asking you to write the letter, right?
Yes, there were criminal allegations against
You know
him.
what the allegations were.
Again, it depends at what time we're talking about. My
You worked
understanding.
for him after he was
Sorry,
convicted
it's-
for over a decade.
No,
You
no,
can't avoid it.
my apologies. I'm sorry, I'm not speaking loud enough. My understanding, basically, that the allegations against him at the time, I think at the time that this was going on, you know, forgive me, it was a while ago, but I think the allegations at that time, this is the state investigation in Palm Beach, were that there were massages at his house. Some of those massages wound up sexual in nature, and that at times it wound up being the case that there were some underage women there in the massages.
So you understood that those were the allegations or the nub of the charges at the time you wrote your letter.
I did understand that those were the allegations, but if I could talk a little bit more about that, I'd like to, if that's okay.
And I'm sure they're going to get into that. I just want to ask one other question. You wrote the letter. Criminal defense attorney asked you to write the letter. Did you ever discuss the charges with Mr. Epstein before you wrote your statement?
No,
You never talked to him once about these allegations before, even though you just described somewhat of what you knew about him. You did not discuss that with him at all before you wrote a good character reference for him.
to the extent that there were discussions with Epstein, they were always in the presence of defense counsel. There were many lawyers there, and I was a member of that group. So I never had a personal conversation with him like that, like the one that you're suggesting.
And during those conversations, I assume that Mr. Epstein wasn't mute. He was speaking perhaps about the charges.
So, well, a couple of things. I want to talk to you about them, but I will say this. I have a balance of privilege here, but I also don't want it to be that I'm trying to withhold anything from you. So at the time that this was going on, what I was learning from the defense people who were investigating it was that the investigation was full of allegations that were in many ways untrue, contradicted by recorded, transcribed statements from the witnesses. What I understood from the attorneys was that the police investigation was flawed and somehow either biased, or there was some, or the facts of that investigation as described in the police report were inconsistent with recorded statements from the witnesses, omitted information that the witnesses gave them in recorded statements. There was even, if I recall, there was even in the police report reference to a trash pull where the police report indicated that they found a sex toy in the trash pull. And it later turned out that what was identified as a sex toy was in fact a broken salad utensil. And so, but when the police used the information from the report in their affidavits and their arrest warrants, they kept the part about it being finding sex toys in the garbage pull, but never mentioned the fact that it was later found to be a salad utensil. There's also no mention in that police report about the fact that Epstein had been adamant that he didn't know that anybody was underage. In fact, there was, as I understood it, because I didn't do it, but as I understood it, there was a lie detector test, a polygraph test, where which indicated that Epstein was being truthful when he said he didn't know about the age.
So Mr. Indyke,
So
let's go back to an earlier question that I asked you about when in context of that charge, when in context to his adjudication of guilt and his sentencing, I assume, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you wrote this in connection with the sentencing or the pre-sentencing report on behalf of the defense. Is that accurate?
I don't know for a fact, but that's not what I recollect.
Okay.
I think this was done previously.
So what I find intriguing about what you just testified to, you mentioned rather lengthy detail about the theory of the defense of Mr. Epstein. But you're having trouble contextualizing when you wrote this particular document. I find that intriguing and a little bit difficult for me to understand why.
May I just say that he didn't write the document, he wrote that excerpt,
Yes.
just to be clear. So the
No, that's correct.
Okay.
Well, over the course of the reason I can provide as much detail about the defense position is because that detail has been argued over and over and over again by the defense counsel. So it's something that has stuck in my mind. When this was written, it was written once. It was also a very long time ago. And so I can't tell you precisely when it was written. And I can't tell you, I just can't tell you the full context when this was submitted.
In your opening, you said that after 2008, after his guilty plea, you thought that he was contrite and that he learned from his mistake. And you said that you were horrified to learn of the crimes he committed after. What crimes are you referencing after 2008?
So now with hindsight,
was he ever charged, or I'm unaware of any charge or referencing times post 2008? What charges are you referencing? What crimes are you referencing?
I'm not referencing any charges after 2008. After he was...
what conduct after 2008 was criminal? Because you said that you were horrified to learn of his criminal activity after that. In your opening.
I'm not sure that I don't think I said I was horrified to learn of his criminal activity. I was horrified that he hurt people. But all of that is in the context of statements that have emerged since his death.
What criminal activity occurred? I'm unaware what criminal activity occurred post 2008.
I don't specifically know what criminal activity occurred post 2008. I wasn't there. I didn't see any criminal activity, but what I've seen now are allegations by a number of women that have come to light after he died where they said all of these things happened. And while I've never seen him do anything that way, nobody's ever reported anything to me that way. Clearly, with all of these women saying this happened after the fact, I cannot say that he didn't do a lot of bad things. And so learning this after his death, I feel horribly. And that's what I said. I do feel horrible.
So, Mr. Indyke, just go back to the statement you wrote that was inserted in the defense statement. I just wondering if was it your normal practice to write such a letter of recommendation on behalf of someone without full understanding of the ramifications of what you were saying and the allegations and the context with which you were being asked to write that? I mean, did you know why you were being asked to write that specific statement?
I knew that people were making allegations against him, which were contrary to what I had observed in him. And the truth is that I felt they asked me for what he had done that was generous to me, and I felt like I could be honest about that. And so that's why I did it.
So I'm aware that you were a transactional attorney, probably didn't know ramifications, but you understood, I would guess, as an attorney, somewhere along the pipe, I had to understand something about criminal law, that your statement was going to be used to facilitate a reduction in sentence, reduction in charges, or some benefit to Mr. Epstein in light of the rather substantial charges which you described in some detail that you were aware of.
At the time that first of all, this is the first time anything like that ever happened to me. So to some extent, it's all very new to me. I am still representing the person. The person that I represented never exhibited this kind of conduct to me, was very generous to me. And at the time,
But even though he
May I
was
finish,
generous
sir?
to you,
May I finish?
even though he was generous to you, you understood this was going to be used to facilitate either reduction in sentence or reduction in charges.
But I also understood, the answer is, I understood that it was I didn't know it was going to be used for reduction of charges or reduction of sentence. I understood it was going to be used to give to law enforcement as a character reference for him. Okay, I did understand that.
And so why would you give a character reference if not for reduction of sentence or reduction in charges? I mean, that's why you would give something like that to a police agency, is it not?
That's not what was going on. That's not what I was thinking at the time.
All right.
It wasn't.
Mr. Indyke, you
Yeah.
referenced attorney-client privilege. I just, for the record, if you wish to assert any privilege, you must say so on the record.
So far, there hasn't been a very specific question. If that does arrive, I'll let you know.
And we're going to jump around a little bit here, but you had mentioned that the allegations that were made against Mr. Epstein during that 2006, 2008 period, you had mentioned they were untrue. Did you make that determination yourself?
No, that was communicated to me.
Who communicated that to you?
And it was communicated through defense counsel. And the reason I can discuss it is it's the same statements that defense counsel made in documents they delivered to the government.
And for the record, who was the defense counsel?
Epstein had a lot of defense attorneys at the time. Off the top of my head, Gerald Lefcourt was one. I believe Jack Goldberger was one.
A lot of them have suffered
Um,
untimely demises. Imagine that.
Alan Dershowitz, I think I mentioned. Lily Sanchez. I'm trying to remember who was involved at that particular time. Cheryl Reich, I believe, was an attorney, a criminal defense attorney of his at the time. Guy Lewis also. Martin Weinberg, the attorneys came on at different times, so I can't tell you exactly who came on when.
In addition to defense counsel, did Mr. Epstein hire private investigators?
I don't know that Mr. Epstein hired private investigators. I believe the defense counsel hired private investigators.
Why were private
Oh,
investigators?
sorry, Roy Black. I want to add to that. Roy Black was part of this as well.
Why were defense or private investigators hired?
Not being a criminal defense attorney, and not participating at the time that they did this, because I came in after. I didn't hear anything about the allegations until about 2006 or so. Much of the attorney's work had already been done by that time, including, I think, the hiring of private investigators. So the actual reasons as to why, I don't know, but I think my assumption at the time was that's kind of what you do as a criminal defense attorney, is you bring on a private investigator to find out information so that you can have a full idea of what you're defending.
For the record, did you ever work with these private investigators?
At some point, I did communicate with private investigators, I think, for payment. And I'm sure I must have had conversations at some point in the process, not early on, but I just don't remember.
But you yourself, as far as the work that the private investigators were conducting, you didn't direct them?
For the criminal work that you're talking about, absolutely not.
And earlier you mentioned that you never socialized with Mr. Epstein. Did Mr. Epstein ever invite you to social events?
I was invited one time, and it was the only time, to not a social event with him, frankly, but it was a Victoria's Secret fashion show. I was invited one time, and that was the only time. I think I saw him there once, but I certainly didn't socialize with him there. And it wasn't just me; it was me, Jeff Shans, who I worked with. So the attorneys were invited. But other than that, no, I never was invited to a dinner. I never was invited to a show. I never invited to a movie or anything with him. No.
And I want to return back to the statement that you provided for Epstein's defense. Is it true that you made Mr. Epstein a godfather of your children?
Yes, it was an honorary appellation. I had no expectation.
They're not friends at all, though. No personal association.
Do something to show gratitude for how he helped my wife and I have our children. And so I had asked him, would it be okay? And he wouldn't have any obligation to do anything but as a way of honoring him, if I could make him honorary godfather, and I did.
Sorry, based on your testimony, your children did not have any relationship with Mr. Epstein.
No. I think in total they met him twice in the office, and they were very, very young at the time. My wife was there. They were in the office. I think it was 2 times.
Would you have entrusted Mr. Epstein to care for your children?
To care for my children? I wouldn't have trusted anybody to care for my children.
Who is Ghislaine Maxwell?
When you're the godparents,
Ghislaine
you
Maxwell
get
was
custody
an
when you
associate
pass
of Jeffrey
away.
Epstein.
You were going to
When
leave
did you
your
first
kids
meet
to
Ghislaine
him.
Maxwell?
What the?
Sometime after I started working representing Epstein in 1996.
What did you understand her relationship to be with Mr. Epstein?
My understanding in it, at the time, my understanding was that she was largely kind of an overall household manager. Epstein even then would travel from different households, and Ghislaine was responsible for making sure that the households were managed properly, that they were supplied properly, that the employees there were doing the cleaning and things like that. That was my understanding of her role. I learned at some point that she had been a girlfriend of his, though I do not believe at the time that I was there that she was a girlfriend of his.
And you mentioned that she would manage Mr. Epstein's properties. Did you ever understand her to have any role in arranging or scheduling masseuses for Mr. Epstein?
No.
She never talked to you about paying masseuses?
No.
How often did you interact with Ghislaine Maxwell?
When I worked in the office in New York City on Madison Avenue, she had an office there, so she appeared from time to time. She wasn't in my section of the office, but she was there, so I would see her. I would say hello, that kind of thing. And it wasn't super frequent, but I saw her. I saw her there.
As far as your day-to-day and the legal services you were providing, did you have any interactions with her?
At times I did. Again,
I'm looking to see if he was involved with
it was
the Terramar project
so
that
there were
Ghislaine
times
Maxwell
I believe Maxwell
was
purchased a
involved
townhouse.
with.
So I did work for that townhouse, the purchase of that townhouse. I believe she had me look at an agreement or two. I can't recall which agreements off the top of my head, but I believe she had me look at agreements or two. And sometimes she would convey requests by Epstein for me to do some kind of a transactional or corporate work for that.
And you mentioned the acquisition of the property. This past week, we had Mr. Khan testify, and he said that there were accounting work that he did for Ms. Maxwell, and she, I don't want to mischaracterize his testimony, but said effectively that she didn't pay. Did she pay you for the work that you did for her?
No, it was done, to the extent I did work for her, it was at the authorization of Epstein.
Would you consider Ghislaine Maxwell at any point to be a friend of yours?
No.
Do you believe that Maxwell facilitated Epstein's access to minor victims?
I don't know.
Mr. Indyke, I want the record to be clear, so I'm going to ask you some questions related to the investigation of Mr. Epstein in 2005. When did you first become aware that there was an investigation into Mr. Epstein's conduct in Southern Florida?
I'm not entirely certain. I believe it was 2006, 2007.
And for the record, you did not have any knowledge of the illegal activity by Mr. Epstein prior to his arrest.
I'd worked for him for a decade, and I had no knowledge of any allegations being made against him like that.
On October 20th of 2005, police executed a search warrant for Mr. Epstein's Palm Beach, Florida home. Do you recall this occurring?
Can you tell me the date again?
October 20th, 2005.
I don't think I knew contemporaneously.
Palm Beach detective Joseph Riccieri spoke out about his belief that Epstein was tipped off about the raid since multiple computers expected to be at his house were missing when the search warrant was executed. To your knowledge, did anyone tip off Jeffrey Epstein to the October 20th search warrant in Palm Beach?
I don't know.
When you visited Mr. Epstein's properties, did you notice cameras?
Can we you specify which property?
Well, you mentioned the Manhattan property at one point.
Sure. So let's break it down. The Manhattan property. My understanding about the cameras, there were cameras in the Manhattan property. My understanding is that they were external cameras. There was a security room when you first walked in to the right that had monitors of the external cameras that were all around the perimeter, the outside of his townhouse. I later found out, and by later I mean, I think, you know, after things start to get conflated, but I think I found this out after he got arrested the second time, that there was one camera, and this is probably even after he died, that was one camera. He had a safe room in the house. I didn't know there was a safe room in the house, but he had a safe room in the house. And there was a camera outside the safe room in the house. Those are the cameras that I knew about in New York. In Florida, there was much made about, and I think it was in the press. Again, a lot has gone on and lots of reports have come out since then. But I believe in Florida, there was a reference to cameras in his house, but there were cameras, as I understand it, that the police helped put in there because there was concern that somebody was stealing from him. So they put the cameras, I think, in his desk on the ground floor. And I wasn't sure if there was maybe one in the garage as well. But those are the cameras that I knew about.
There have been allegations that Mr. Epstein would record visits at various properties. You don't know anything about that?
I've heard the allegations. I know of no recordings. I don't know of cameras that would have done that. Mr.
Indyke, excuse me.
Yes.
The majority has about 5 minutes, and I just want to make sure the record is clear. And I'm going to ask you numerous yes or no questions. First, how did this is not a yes or no question. How did Mr. Epstein act towards the young women or girls that he surrounded himself with?
The question assumes that I saw him surround himself with young women or girls. It's not true.
Did you ever witness Mr. Epstein engage in sexual conduct?
I never witnessed Mr. Epstein engage in sexual conduct.
Did you ever witness Mr. Epstein have sexual conduct of any kind with young women or girls?
I never witnessed Mr. Epstein have any sexual conduct, period.
Did you ever witness Mr. Epstein sexually abuse or assault young women or girls?
I never witnessed that, no.
Did Mr. Epstein ever discuss sexual acts of any kind with you?
No.
Was it common for Mr. Epstein or Miss Maxwell to bring young women or girls to any other place where the two of you would meet?
The only women that were ever in my presence, to my recollection, with one exception, I'll get to that in a second, were women who were either in their 20s or in their 30s who were assistants, who I understood to be personal assistants of Epstein.
The assistants were also groomers and
I'm sorry,
victims.
and the exception is he had a goddaughter, and I don't know that I feel comfortable giving her name, but he had a goddaughter that I believe he had seen from time to time, and I had met from time to time, a couple of times I think, because she would, when I was in his home, in his dining room, she had come into the dining room.
Can I just be clear? So the exception was that's the only person who you saw as a minor female in his presence?
Correct.
Okay, just to be clear.
Who are the assistants that you're referencing?
Svetlana Pozadaeva. There was a woman by the name of, there was another woman by the name of, I'm trying to remember. If you have some names, I could tell you if I recall them or not.
And we'll have more specific questions.
Okay.
Did Mr. Epstein have children of his own?
To my knowledge, no.
I don't believe that he doesn't have
Did
children.
Epstein or Maxwell ever ask if you wanted them to bring women or girls to you?
Never.
Did you ever have any sexual contact with young women or girls in the presence of Epstein or Maxwell?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever have sexual contact with any young woman or girl introduced to you by Epstein or Maxwell?
Absolutely not.
Did you ever witness Mr. Epstein receive a massage from a young woman or girl?
No.
Did you ever receive any massages from any young woman or girl brought to you by or introduced to you by Mr. Epstein or Miss Maxwell?
No.
will go off the record.
Why are they going off the record? Right there at that most pivotal point. They're sitting there talking about the relations and
Can you go on
the
record?
trafficking and the young women.
Mr. Indyke, good
Crazy,
morning.
bro.
Good morning.
I understand that Ms.
This
Crockett
is
has a
all
statement.
such
Just
bullshit.
quickly, as you go through your line
Repost
of
the space,
questioning,
everybody.
when you
Please,
reference
bottom right
someone,
corner.
you
If
say
you're on
the assistant,
YouTube,
if you say the
like and
partner,
share the channel.
can
Thank you so
also
much.
make sure that you reference their name after you label their title for clarity of the record?
I'll try to remember that, yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Indyke, I'm going to revisit some of the areas that you discussed with my majority colleagues in the previous round. In doing that, I don't want to make you repeat yourself. I just want to make sure that we have as clear a record as possible.
Okay.
So going back to the time when
Hey,
Mr.
Diligent,
Epstein
you
first
think he
hired
sold
you,
himself
did
out
you have
with
a title?
the video comment earlier about watching the movies?
And
you catch that?
if I understood your testimony correctly,
Yeah.
you were the sole proprietor of an entity called Darren Indyke PLLC. Is that right?
Darren K. Indyke,
Darren K. Indyke.
LLC. And I don't think did I give that name? But that is.
Thank you. And if I also understand correctly, Jeffrey Epstein was the sole client of Darren K. Indyke PLLC. Is that right?
He was the primary client. From time to time, he was the primary client, and from time to time, I would do things for him and for his clients. But he was the primary client, and there were times when friends or acquaintances or somebody else would come. I wouldn't take on jobs very often because the expectation was that I would be available at all times and that I would get projects for Epstein, and sometimes it's for Epstein's clients. I would get a project, and the expectation was as soon as that project came to me, that would be the most important thing I did, and I would get it done very quickly. So it wasn't, part of what I had to do was be available to make sure that I could respond to those things on that basis. And if I brought on more clients, that would interfere with that.
Are you familiar with an entity called J. Epstein and Co.?
Yes, I am familiar with that entity. I believe it's called J. Epstein and Company.
And were you associated with it in any way?
Long time ago, but I believe that's the entity that initially employed me.
And over what period of time did J. Epstein and Company employ you?
I don't remember the exact end date, but it was from 1996 for 3 or so years.
And was there another entity that employed you following J. Epstein and Company?
There was another entity called New York Strategy Group, which was primarily owned by Shantz.
I'm sorry.
By Jeffrey Shantz, the partner that brought me in there. I believe I had a minority ownership of that LLC. It was an LLC.
And over what period of time were you employed through New York Strategy Group?
I believe that New York Strategy Group was my employer until, I want to say, (2006 or 7). And at some point, I became the primary owner of New York Strategy Group.
And when did Darren K. Indyke PLLC come into existence?
That came into existence, I believe, in 2008. Again, it was some time ago, but I believe it was in 2008.
So does J. Epstein and Company still exist?
No.
When was it wound down?
I believe J. Epstein and Company was wound down when Epstein moved his primary residence to the U.S. Virgin Islands and formed a company there. I don't remember the date exactly, but the company's name is Financial Trust Company, Inc. And J. Epstein and Company was discontinued at that point, I believe.
Did you have any association with Financial Trust Company, Inc.?
I believe I was at some point a corporate secretary, may have been a vice president in a.
Just
in an
say
administrative
yes.
sense.
Yes, I did. Yes, you did, motherfucker. I gotta quit saying motherfucker so much. But these
You were asked
motherfuckers
earlier
piss me off.
about your communications with Jeffrey Epstein. Are you aware of Jeffrey Epstein ever using encrypted messaging software or an encrypted messaging app such as Signal?
As part of the things that I did for Epstein, once he became a registered sex offender,
You notice
I had
he's not
to
giving yes or no
report
answers like you should be.
or include in a report to the New York sex
He's
offender
obviously been
registry,
instructed not to.
apps that he had used or that he had a presence on. I want to say that at some point, I remember Signal being used and maybe WhatsApp, though I can't tell you when.
At the time you started working for Jeffrey Epstein, what was his net worth to your knowledge? An approximate number is fine.
I don't know.
Did you come to know that later in time?
Well, I know it when he died because I'm co-executor of the estate. I had to know it. There were times that I could recall over the, before I became executor, hearing net worths around, $500 million, sometimes less, sometimes 300 million. But, accounting for his assets and his wealth, that wasn't my role.
I just made a post of
So
him
if I
saying
heard
that he
it,
made
I
Epstein
heard it
his
in passing,
godfather
not
of his kids.
necessarily something
Go
that
check
I
it
would-
out and share it. It's
that
up
I
in the
would be kind of
Jumbotron.
investigating or reporting.
And whose role was it to keep track of that?
Reputation that he had was that he was skilled with understanding financial markets, currencies, options, securities trading, but that his business wasn't as an investment advisor. His business was more as a financial consultant. But he did have participations in funds. And those funds yielded him pretty
Not a
solid
financial
results. So
advisor,
between the
but an
funds
investment
and the
consultant.
the clientele that he had that paid him
What?
fees over time, that's where his wealth came from my understanding.
If we could focus on the client servicing piece, how many clients did he have during the time that you worked for him?
I'm trying to, I can name them. I never actually thought about how many, but Wes Wexner, clearly. When I first joined, he'd given me some kind of an assignment to do for David Rockefeller. I don't know if Rockefeller was a paying client. I wouldn't, that's not something I wasn't, again, that wasn't my role, but I did work for David Rockefeller. Wasn't my role, but I did work for David Rockefeller. I believe Elizabeth.
YouTube saying they lost audio. Let me fix it.
I believe Elizabeth.
YouTube saying they lost audio. Let me
With Johnson. And I know there was work done for Mort Zuckerman. Leon Black. I know the Rothschilds. Trying to remember which of them or what entity, but I don't.
Would that be Ariana Rothschild?
I know the name Ariana Rothschild, and it's possible that it was for Ariana, but I'm not 100% certain.
It's still glitching. Hold
Glenn
on.
Dubin?
For Ariana, but
It's still glitching. Hold on.
I don't remember the full name, but that's the fun name.
Oh, there's
And
no
there
audio
was
at all.
a dispute about Phoebe Zwern that got fairly elevated. And as part of the resolution of that dispute, there was a settlement that came about. As part of the resolution of that dispute, because it was Dubin's referral to that fund, Dubin had some kind of compensation payment to Epstein to settle that case. And the last thing that I recall is Dubin had a company. I can't remember the name of the company right now as I'm sitting here, but that company was purchased by J.P. Morgan, I believe, and I believe Epstein got a finder's fee for that, and that was a one-off thing. It wasn't like Epstein was kind of representing Dubin all the time or things like that.
What about Steven Sinofsky?
I know the name. I don't know, and I believe that there was a payment from Sinofsky. I just don't know. I don't know the nature of that relationship.
And just going down the roster,
Mhm.
to the best of your recollection, how much did each of these people pay Epstein for the services he provided to them? And I'll start with Les Wexner.
I really don't know how much Wexner paid him. It was a lot, but I just don't know how much.
And what was the nature of the work that Epstein did for Les Wexner?
A variety of things. As I understood it, and his relationship with Wexner predates my arrival there, but as I understood it, sometimes people who obtain kind of this ultra high net worth standing get there gradually over time, and they kind of build their offices gradually over time. And when they do that, it becomes inefficient. There are people who are not necessarily doing things and getting paid to do things, and there are people doubling up on things. And so part of the thing that Epstein did, at least for Wexner, that I can recall being told about, was kind of cleaning house a little bit. Also, he would do things for Wexner, like, for example, even, somebody at that level of wealth has lots and lots and lots of assets. And all of those things, art, jewelry, all of that stuff require insurance. But unless you're kind of born into it, you don't know how you're supposed to deal with that. And how you're supposed to deal with that is photograph it and appraise it. So all of that's for record. God forbid something happens to it. You have good records to justify your insurance claim. So they help organize it that way. Jeffrey did tax work, estate planning work.
Not to interrupt you, I'm receiving another request for you to speak up. I think some of our audience members are having difficulty hearing you.
Is it, I move this closer, would it help? Or not?
Let's try it.
Yeah, let's do that. Sorry, my voice is not.
I think it's for the people in the room, just a little.
Yeah, I don't know
Right.
if the mic's gonna.